Hello everybody and welcome to another Bald Health class. This week we are going to be talking about fantasies, and we're going to be taking a little bit of a different approach on it. We're not going to be talking about the different types of fantasies. We'll get into that in another episode, but this week we're going to be talking about why we have the fantasies that we do, understanding why we do and how we get to these types of fantasies, kind of breaking down the shame surrounding it, and just kind of understanding how big of a role our brain plays in pleasure and obviously creating fantasies. And just because you have these fantasies doesn't necessarily mean you want them to come true. It's just kind of what happens in your brain that kind of gets you to your final destination in that sense. So there is a portion of that come in. So it plays a huge role in dopamine release, and it's specifically, or it's like so consistently linked to releasing dopamine when it comes to any type of pleasure that a lot of neuroscientists are actually calling it the pleasure center of the brain. And this specific part of the brain plays a huge role in positive reinforcement learning, like aversion, rewards, motivation, things like that, which then plays a huge role in drug addiction. So, or any kind of pleasure seeking or addictive seeking like that. So I'll add a picture to it to explain it a little better, but there's two portions of it, and it's kind of at the base of your skull, like right behind your ear parts here, and it plays obviously a huge role in fantasies. So there is a podcast, it's called Dear Sugars. For the life of me I cannot find the episode, but I'll do way more digging into it. I have to re-listen to so many to understand where it was. I thought I saved it, but apparently I did not. But they were talking about that on there. They were talking with one scientist or therapist, and they were talking about how so many people are so ashamed by their fantasies, and how they don't actually want these things to happen, but they're still, when they're trying to get to their final destination, they're thinking about these extreme things. And what they were talking about is how, in order for all of your brain to shut off, like all your logical thinking and all of your list making areas, that's probably what you're doing while you're doing this. You're like, oh my god, what am I gonna do after this? What am I gonna cook for dinner? Like all those things. In order for those parts of your brain to shut down, and for your pleasure centers to really kick up, sometimes you need to go to extreme measures. Like some days, you don't have to think about fantasies, you're just ready to go. And sometimes you're just like, oh my god, how did I get this vortex of doom? Like, I don't even want these things to happen. And then it takes off. So that's all that it is, really. There's no real reason to be ashamed of it. It's literally just that area of your brain trying to shut down the rest of it so that you can really sit and be within your pleasure. That's it. It's not that you want it to happen, and it's not necessarily like you should act on it, especially if it's something that is very illegal. But that's just sometimes what you need in your brain in order to shut down the rest of it, just so you can actually sit and be within your pleasure. It sounds extreme, but that's exactly what it is. And that's where a lot of people find the shame about it, because they're like, oh my god, I can't believe I was thinking about that. And that's kind of where it got me to finish. And should I feel ashamed about it? Is this something that I need to happen? And lots of people actually go to therapy for it, because they're like, oh, there's something wrong with me. And it's literally just the pleasure centers of your brain trying to shut down everything else. And I mean, definitely as anybody who is, anybody really. Sometimes we've had long days. Sometimes we had a lot on our mind, and it's really hard to just sit, relax, and enjoy the process of what's happening. And we need all of these other things, all of this other sensory overload. It is basically an overload in order for us to just shut our frickin' brains off. And this is just another way of doing that. It's literally not that you want these fantasies to happen. It's just that that's what your brain is needing. It's got to go to these extreme measures in order to shut it down so that it can actually receive pleasure. So again, don't feel shame around it. I mean, if it's something that you act on, and again, it's super not right or illegal, then that's something different that you need to deal with. But this is basic, like, we all have really weird fantasies sometimes. We're just like, okay, maybe we never tell anybody about that. But maybe it's just one time, or maybe it's a couple times, and that's just it. That's just on your busy days, you know you're gonna think that. So just don't think about it too much. Don't think that that's a part of your being now. It's just a part of your brain trying to shut it down so you can reach the ending. And a lot of these fantasies too, I like to have boundaries with it. So a lot of fantasies, I think, should just stay as fantasies, even if they're not like extravagant or crazy. I think a lot of them should stay fantasies, because once again, with the addiction part of things, if you get to that fantasy, then you're just like, well, I've already had it happen, so now what? I gotta go to the next best thing. And then it just keeps climbing and it keeps climbing to the point that you need all of these things in order to just get off. And instead of just being with your partner, being with yourself, and maybe just with a toy, you need like all these bells and whistles, you need all this crazy shit to happen. So I think there's obviously a limit into which people should play out their fantasies, because again, it can be linked to it's like sex addictions or porn addictions or things like that, because you always just need that. It's not just like a want or once in a while thing. It's like you need it in order to climax or get to that point. And while it might help you, it's not necessarily healthy. And yeah, just understanding the role that your fantasies play into things, and not that they necessarily need to play out. It just maybe needs to stay a fantasy, right? So understanding that distinction is kind of important. Don't let your fantasies become a part of who you are, because I know a lot of people have a tendency to do that, whether it's good or whether that's bad. So it's not identity fantasies. It's not like identity politics. Like, it's just something some days that you need in order to get to that part. So don't feel ashamed by it. Again, though, if it's something that's like really legal and you're thinking about acting on it, definitely talk to a counselor. They can help you with stuff like that. But just don't read any more into it than just what it is. It is a fantasy. It is your pleasure centers trying to shut down the rest of your brain in order for you to relax and to release and to reach that point. It's not that you want it to happen. It's not that you want to fulfill it. And it does not mean anything is wrong with you. So just enjoy it. But again, don't think anything of it. And it just becomes, dangerous if you want to act on it and it's like extremely aggressive. But I mean, if that's something you want, that's also your business. But again, do it safely, do it legally. If that's something, it's a thing. No illegal activities here. We like to be out and about, but we like to stay within the realm of legal things in most countries. So but yeah, hopefully that has helped some people. I know it's definitely helped me, because I was like, oh, that seems like a little questionable. Maybe I don't read into that as much as I think I should, but it helps out quite a bit, just knowing that it's simply just your brain trying to help you out. That's it. So I hope everybody has a really good week. I hope everyone is staying nice and warm, because it is super cold where I am. And I will see you next week.